Gonzalo being with
There were a couple of, no, there was some more.
Were
Don't
they
worry about
blue?
it. Yep, that's it.
They came with my paper, my friend, I apologize.
It's okay. I was like, well, if it took off, I guess it's more practice for me.
Gonzalo can talk without the paper.
So-
No, good job.
I said, well, all in alignment, so I was prepared for whatever. So thanks so much for being here. I'm really happy to be here, and I feel so much at home being here, whether I'm listening to service or just giving service. So I feel very much grounded, and this is exactly where I need to be. So thank you for opening your doors and your hearts. So the talk is called Being Ruthless, and I share with you that line that I heard from Neville Goddard, longtime spiritual teacher, that I've been really getting into lately. And when I heard him say being ruthless about maintaining our state of being and the energy and the power that we exude, I thought, wow, that's strong language. But we need to hear that strong language. We really need to hear that jolting, almost aggressive, almost loud language, because we've been so conditioned, so thoroughly trained to be in the opposite state of what we really desire. And so to be ruthless about maintaining our state of being, the energy, the power that we exude, even if we don't feel it fully, but when we intend to really sink into the feeling fully in our imagination, to fill our imaginations with intensity and power, to exude and radiate the state that we want. That's the type of determinism, and that's the type of intensity that we need to go through the day to be able to sift through all of the stimulus and the invitations and temptations to be fearful, to feel down, to feel sad, to feel powerless, to feel victim, to feel like we have to attack others, to feel like we have to go along and people please and feel guilty and feel shameful and feel down and feel not good enough and feel unworthy. We do have to feel ruthless about maintaining the state of our God-given power and our God-given identity, our God-given eternal spirit that doesn't get restricted or held back by any of the conditions that are outside of us. We do need to hear that very strong language. We need to hear it for ourselves. We need to repeat it to ourselves and be steadfast and be absolutely committed to when things come up that we remember right away feelings of negativity and feelings of darkness that will come up during the day, that they're reminders for us to take our minds and our hearts back and be ruthless about shifting our energy toward our desired state of being. And most of us generally want the same thing. We want a sense of fulfillment. We want a sense of joy. We want a sense of feeling whole. We want a sense of feeling like we have purpose. We want a sense of feeling safe. We want a sense of feeling that we're protected from all the craziness that we see outside of us. We want a sense of feeling grounded in a truth that doesn't shake, in a truth that doesn't bend or bow to external conditions. We want solid ground to stand on. All of us generally want those same things, and where we get that is really sinking into the depths of our heart in full intensity in our imaginations and really being the creator and the force of our creator and the almighty of the universe, and being that force and allowing that to come through, even if we don't really feel it all the way. But the intention and the direction of our minds and the sort of force of our imaginations to really exude that is everything. I mentor a group of students at the high school where I work, and we always talk about the same types of things where we are so used to letting our imaginations run wild all day long that our imaginations end up running us. But we never think about taking that same mechanism of our God-given power in our imagination and turning it around to imagine our fullness of our God potential and imagine the fullness of our Creator's potential coming through us to be able to shift the energy and the environment towards the direction of what we want. Again, those things, those gifts of God, of power, of creatorship, of stability, because the world is showing us constant instability, of joy, because the world is showing us constant darkness, of unity, of oneness, of respect for our differences, because the world is showing us so much opposite and justifying the opposite of that unity. We need to be absolutely steadfast and determined to get that back, and it's up to us to receive that God-given power and to really exude that. We can do that in silence. We don't have to say it. We don't have to talk about it. We don't need to announce it. We don't need to try to convince anybody or debate about it. We just need to be that, and be that with fullness and with intensity, and really sink into our imagination into that feeling. I share with the students that if I told you to go into your imaginations right now and to imagine the hottest sexual fantasy you would ever want, everybody in here would know what to do. Why? Because we've been doing it our whole life. We automatically know how to go into sexual fantasy because we've been doing it our whole life. We don't have a problem with that. But then if I say use that same imagination to go to a place to where you feel fully empowered and fully energized by the divine creator of the universe coming through you in all of its intensity. Imagine that you have that sense of control and authority and master over your emotions and master over the feelings that tend to keep us down. Imagine that coming through. We have a problem with that. We have a problem with taking the power that we were given and using it. We have a problem with taking the creatorship that we were given and using it because we've been so convinced to be small. We've been so convinced, so thoroughly convinced that being unworthy and small and guilty and less than, that there's some virtue there. We've even been fooled in a spiritual sense that holding on to or embracing our darkness, our fear, our depression, our sadness, our feelings of being empty, that we have to embrace that. We've been fooled even in a spiritual sense, I feel. Because we hear so much in spiritual language, we need to embrace our darkness, embrace our depression, love our depression, love our sadness. No, we don't. No, we don't. We've only got so many hours in the day and so many days on earth. Why would we want to hold on to a state of being that's wearing us down? Why would we want to embrace a state of being that is tearing us down and not allowing us to feel our God-given fullness? Why would we want to hold on to that? We can acknowledge it, that this is what we're going through. We don't have to deny it, that this is what I'm going through. We can acknowledge fully, this is the assignment that's come up for me now. This is the task that's in my face and in my heart now. Now allow me to shift that energy, allow my God-given power to come through and sink into that and really be in that, and to shift back to the state of fulfillment that we really want, which is fullness, which is power, which is control over all of these emotions that are convincing us that we have to be low and small. One of the things, speaking of being ruthless and shifting the energy, shifting the environment and not allowing the environment to shift us around, I noticed last Thursday's group in the mentoring session with the boys only section, because we have a part of the group where we split the groups by gender. And I sit with the boys in a small group session. And I notice when I invite the boys and the whole group to sit up and sit nice and tall and powerful, almost superhero-like, to embrace our power and embrace our energy, embrace our ability to radiate strength, not talk about it, not being cocky, but our ability to really radiate that. You can sense somebody's energy by their posture and how sincere they are in their intention to exude a sense of power and control. Sincere control, not attempting to get attention, or not phony types of control, but sincere control and mastery of the external stimulus. You can sense that without somebody even saying a word. And I invite students to sit up nice and tall. Don't slouch. To sit up and allow their fullness and their strength and their power to come through, and to do that consistently. And so many of the boys had trouble standing up tall and sticking their chest out. So many of them wanted to hide and would rather slouch down in their seats and disappear. And 3 of the boys picked up and walked out the room because it was too much of an intimidating effect on them to be invited to claiming their power. So the 3 of them just picked up and walked out. And it dawned on me that, wow, the conditioning that these children, that we all went through, but these children in particular are going through is so immense, to take them away from their God-given truth and away from their God-given power and away from their God-given creatorship that we're all given, but are somehow convinced away from it. The conditioning and the pressure and the programming they're going through is absolutely immense. So we need to be very intentional and very directed in how we recognize that in each other, in young people, in everyone. We need to be very intentional that when we look at each other and when we look at our differences and our mile-long list of complaints that we have with each other about the groups that are fighting with each other and criticizing each other and attacking each other personally for their differences, as opposed to honoring our differences for the reminders that they are to look at ourselves and what we need to learn about ourselves and what we need to work on and grow and evolve and practice within ourselves to be able to respond with more wisdom and to be able to extend that wisdom. Instead of doing that, we're falling into the traps of being a weak-minded people, to go along with, to conform, to listen to everything that we hear as far as the way we should think and the way we should respond, the way we should look at those people and judge and attack and condemn just because it's so common and so easy to do so. And we need to be absolutely ruthless in claiming our minds and our heart backs and redirecting our attention back to how our differences and how our difficulties and our conflicts within ourselves and with each other, how they are reminders, they're calling us, they're voices that are calling us to pay attention to the real truth, the real light of our creatorship that lies beyond the appearance of our physical differences and our philosophical and belief differences, our cultural and our national differences. Those things are reminders and they're calling us, they're arrows, they're pointing us, they're signals to not get caught in it, to recognize and not deny it, but not get caught in it, don't identify with it, and to use it as an opportunity to walk through it. Jesus in the Course in Miracles reminds us that forgiveness is not sitting back and saying we're going to be a better person. It's not self-righteous and calling ourselves more higher and more spiritual than other people. Being in a place of forgiveness allows us the vision of the Christ to see past the temptations to get caught in identities of separation to where we attack each other, where we attack ourselves because of an attack on someone else, a condemnation on someone else, really ends up coming back and attacking ourselves for all of the heavy, dark, burdensome emotion that we can wear ourselves down with when we constantly justify attack for things that, if we're really honest with, we're doing ourselves in a different way, in a different light, in maybe a more subtle way that we're doing ourselves, and we would rather allow that to be outside of us in something or some other person or group of people or nations of people to make ourselves feel better about ourselves, so we don't have to look at the dark areas of our minds that are too difficult to look at. So I want to share with some highlights from the Neville Goddard talks that really stood out in very strong language about how we need to take our minds and our heart back. During the day, when we go through our normal interactions and difficulties and highlights and high points of the day, they're not all bad. You know, we have some points during the day, even when we're having difficult days, when we're tired and fatigued and worn out and irritated and annoyed, we have high points throughout the day. So even those, even the high points, even the good, joyful moments are opportunities to remind us to come back to purpose and mission, to see through them and to see that we can actually gain a sense of stability and a sense of sameness, in a sense of one safety and one solid, changeless state of being that's unaffected by anything in the external, if we're intentional about using our day's experiences to come back to that. So some points that I wanted to share from these talks. The powerful one, all of us, the one that lives within us, who does not bow to evidence, but makes evidence bow to them. We hear all the time about we're a product of our environment. And that is true in a worldly sense. We see a lot of consistent examples of how our upbringing, rearing, and conditioning produces a version of ourselves. We know that. But we don't stop to think that we can actually make the environment a product of us. We can turn that around, but we have to be intentional and not get fooled and weighed down by the appearance of things and think that we have no power there or energy to be able to shift the feeling sense there. We don't have to talk about it, don't have to preach about it, don't have to debate or convince anybody. We can silently shift the energy that we bring to our space, to our room, to our life, to our world when we wake up and we're very intentional about the state of being that we want. I think most of us generally for ourselves want the same uplifting, joyful, unifying, happy, enlightened experience, evolved, compassionate experience. And most of us generally want that when we tear down all of the extraneous stuff. But we have to be intentional about really standing in that and not being shy and not being apologetic about the power and the control that we can wield over our emotions and our feelings. That we do not have to become our feelings and our emotions, contrary to the stuff that we were taught. We can actually use them as a reminder to take back our almighty creatorship over those things that have convinced us to be small and feel unworthy and not deserving of our God-given power that we've been given and that rests in our heart right now. Inner discipline is outer sovereignty. He or she who governs the invisible within themselves govern the visible outside of themselves. And again, to go through the day with the intention that your internal state that you exude outwardly, that our internal state of being that we extend and that we energize outwardly, that's our decision to churn and to create and to extend that. We don't have to talk about it. The beautiful thing is that we don't need permission. We can do that in silence. We can do that without the disruption of having to convince people of our points of view and our points of belief being valid. We can just wake up and do it and be intentional in that. Again, our imaginations are so powerful that they cause physical reactions when our imagination takes us so far. They cause physical reactions in us, and we know this. We can take that imagination back and we can imagine the Creator coming through and exuding the state of being that we want. We can do that now, and we can take control of our inner environment and absolutely affect the direction and the experiences that we have in the physical that follow from that. But we have to be consistent, especially when stuff comes up to tempt us to go back to our default mode of being small, powerless, victim-like, and fearful. The error of most is to beg for external signs before assuming the inner truth. But this is the root of slavery, waiting to see in order to believe. The law demands that you believe before you see. This is the root of slavery, waiting to see in order to believe. And again, most of us have been trained that we can't feel a certain way unless we get external validation in the world. And that's what keeps most of us in lack, in fear, not fully satisfied or fulfilled, because we're always waiting for affirmation in the world, which is constantly changing and can never provide stability. We're waiting for some sense of stability in the world to provide us with a sense of stability inwards, when we really can only get that stability in here, and again, taking back the creatorship and the mastery over the emotional world, which has shown us a constant movie of temptations to feel anything but stable. We can only feel a sense of stability when we can take ourselves back and allow the Creator to come through and let that dictate the consistency. Let the Creator in us dictate stability. Let the Creator in us come through and dictate a sense of sameness, to where we go through the day and we're committed to extending a sense of sameness, a sameness of value, a sameness of honor, a sameness of God-given beauty, a sameness of God-given truth, a sameness of God-given eternity. Our brother David is going through recovery now, and the way we can most serve him is to really, really rest in a place of recognizing his God-given perfection and protection and wholeness, no matter what the physical signs come through. That absolutely absolutely has an effect on the external conditions if we stick with it consistently and can see past the temptations to get bogged down by physical appearances. Again, it's not denial when we use the physical world as reminders to see past it. It's not denial when we use the physical circumstances that show up constantly in our experience as a reminder to shift our focus and our energy on our higher, bigger, powerful creator self and learn to master the physical signs that attempt to distract us away from that creatorship. And again, Neville Goddard calls this being consciously ignorant. You a lot of times think ignorance is a bad thing. He turns it around to say being consciously ignorant. We cannot help but have feelings and emotions. And to be clear, feelings and emotions are not bad. We can't separate ourselves from feeling and emotion, but what we can do is not allow those feelings and emotions to be embedded in our bodies to convince us, like they have convinced us, that we are our feelings and our emotions, that we are that. And we have to be at the behest and the mercy of those feelings and emotions, up and down and up and down and up and down, and most often down. We don't have to do that. We can be absolutely ruthless about remembering that those feelings and emotions simply call the bell for us to return to our creative power, our divine almighty creatorship, which is in us, and to take that back, to stand in that power, to stand tall and energized and powerful and silent in that knowing. And don't apologize for that knowing of our power and exude that. I was sharing with the kids that usually the person who extends the most power and who seems the most powerful and most confident is usually the one that doesn't talk that much. It's usually the quiet one. And we can practice this sense of powerful beingness without saying a word, no matter what comes up. It actually works way better when we don't talk about our practice and we just simply focused on the one goal of extending the creator in us and recognizing that at all. So I'll close with this. I invite all men everywhere, because we know there's a severe lack in our young men and men in general of the ability to exude safety and stability. Severe lack of that. Young men these days don't even know what stability and safety looks like because they've been trained out of it and tend to flutter in this place of being overly emotional and overly erratic without having a sense of control over their over the emotional self. So I invite the men to take on our divine one of our divine roles to extend a sense of safety and stability just from our hearts, without talking about it, just to really go there. And I invite everybody, women and men, to do the same. The world needs now more than ever. We're looking for signs of stability in the world, but we can't get it there. The stability has to come from our creatorship in us first. So I invite all of us to join in that purpose of extending